In this century, great strides have been made toward the goal of subverting our republic into a democracy. The foremost tactic of the subverters is subversion of language. By calling America a democracy until people thoughtlessly accept and use the term, the totalitarians have obscured the real meaning of our principles of government. That is a summary of my report on a constitutional republic, not a democracy.
Welcome back to Notify America. We have multiple pressing stories to get to, stories that include a select subcommittee in Congress alleging that the federal government flagged terms like MAGA, Trump, even the word Bible in financial transactions to essentially put you on a list of would-be extremists. We have the details. Also, Donald Trump pledges to never allow a central bank digital currency in America. This, along with two other new campaign promises that he revealed at an event yesterday. These come after he struck a deal with Vivek Ramaswamy. We have the footage of the event. Also, a new disastrous border deal is making its way around Capitol Hill, a deal that has support amongst key Republican senators, and an official statement from the Pentagon following the Jellyfish UFO that was leaked to investigative journalist Jeremy Corbell, a very revealing non-response. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps me out. Also, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to do that so you continue to receive these daily updates. Last week, investigative journalist Jeremy Corbell released new classified footage of a UAP. This footage has been dubbed the Jellyfish, as it has these hanging, dangling appendages. You can see it on your screen right now. The UAP was recorded in October 2018 at night at a United States Joint Operations base in Iraq. Here's Jeremy Corbell explain what we're actually looking at here. Watch this.
What I'm going to show you now is the footage was captured by our military in 2018. Call it the Jellyfish UAP. It's in thermal. It was filmed on a weapons platform. Each of these hanging things, they were stiff, like they weren't moving. They had geometric form, like scales. What was said to be scales, like an armor. There were also people with night vision who were out, and they were tasked to go look for it. Couldn't see it on the night vision. Only in the thermal spectrum could it be seen.
So that video has never been seen until now. The Pentagon had that footage and they kept it buried. That video was clear, and apparently there's a lot more footage of it that shows its trans-medium capabilities, which means it can move between space and our atmosphere, and then our atmosphere and water. So the additional footage, which hasn't been released, shows apparently this craft fly over a body of water, then descend under the water and stayed underwater for 17 minutes apparently, before reappearing and shooting off at a 45-degree angle. Well, Congress is pissed off. They don't understand why they weren't aware of this footage. They constructed the Aero office for that reason. Aero is the Pentagon's UFO UAP office. It stands for the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which wasn't configured by the Pentagon voluntarily. Congress forced them to do that. They passed a law mandating the Pentagon to do it with the sole goal of keeping them in the loop, informing the Congress about UAP. Well, once again, they were stonewalled. They were kept out of the loop. Here's a clip from News Nation after they asked the Pentagon for more information about this Jellyfish UAP footage. Watch this.
That video, released last week by journalist Jeremy Corbell, appears to show a UFO flying over an American base in Iraq. News Nation reached out to the Pentagon and asked if officials would confirm the video's authenticity. They told us today that, quote, "We do not comment on the authenticity of alleged DoD material that may have been leaked. The Department of Defense takes the potential unauthorized disclosure of national security information very seriously," end quote. Then they seem to be annoyed that it was leaked. They talked about, we take this very seriously.
Yeah, I mean, there's an implicit acknowledgement there that they are annoyed that it was leaked, because they make reference in a specific paragraph to how dimly they view the leaking of material. But the simple fact is it normally takes about 3 or 4 weeks, I think, for them to process a response like this. But I think it's more telling, Elizabeth, that what lies behind this is we are going to see more leaks. People are getting frustrated from within the national security establishment. They think the Pentagon is flat out lying about what it knows about NHI. And they're telling me, they're telling Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp, and other journalists that it's time that the Pentagon came clean with the American public. And I think that this continued attempt to try and evade responsibility for videos that, frankly, almost certainly are Pentagon videos isn't going to help them in the long run. It's not good for American democracy for this continued denial.
Now, it's obvious that the clip's authentic. I don't know who else would be filming over a U.S. military base in Iraq like that, except for the military. So the question is, why are there clear videos of UAP that we're not aware of? What's the reason for not releasing this footage? That's the question. And how many more videos like this exist? In another story, the House Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government announced yesterday that it had received documents which reveal that federal agencies have been flagging financial transactions from banks with sensitive words. Sensitive words. Some of the words that are being flagged include MAGA, Trump, even the word Bible is flagged as sensitive. Chairman of the committee, Jim Jordan, posted this on X yesterday, saying, "We now know the federal government flagged terms like MAGA and Trump to financial institutions if Americans completed transactions using those terms. What was also flagged? If you bought a religious text like a Bible or shopped at Bass Pro Shop, for instance. This means if you used your credit or debit card to buy something and any of the words that appeared on your bank statement included those flagged terms, you're now possibly on a list somewhere, maybe an extremist list, who knows, something like that." We saw them do something similar a few years ago with regard to the parents who would speak up at school board meetings, and they called Donald Trump the authoritarian. This is big government, folks, at work. Now imagine what they could do if we implement a CBDC, a central bank digital currency, a digital dollar. They wouldn't need to ask your bank for these records. They would just know and would be able to place Americans programmatically into certain buckets, right? Based off your spending habits, scary stuff. Well, that brings us to our next story. Donald Trump was in New Hampshire yesterday campaigning, and he made 2 new campaign promises. Watch this.
Tonight, I'm also making another promise to protect Americans from government tyranny. As your president, I will never allow the creation of a central bank digital currency. You know about that?
And this comes a day after he met with Vivek Ramaswamy, right, who spoke to Trump prior to dropping out of the race, and they made a deal. That's how politics works, at least at this level, presidential politics. When candidates decide to drop out and endorse a competitor, they'll usually agree to do that if they get something in return. So in Vivek's case, he highlighted multiple priorities of his that are of the utmost importance, which he wants assurances that Trump's on the same page about. One of them was about CBDCs. Clearly, they are now on the same page. And this, by the way, comes as global leaders, the powerful elite, meet this week in Davos, Switzerland at the WEF annual summit to discuss their plans for the world, for our shared society. And one of the topics that was focused heavily on this year was CBDC, getting it rolled out in all of our countries. We just made an entire video about this on our main channel, on the RJ Talks channel. I'll link that video in the description. In another story, Jamie Dimon leaves reporters stunned on CNBC yesterday as they ask him about Donald Trump. The JP Morgan CEO explains how Trump was right about the economy, right about immigration, right about China, and about NATO. How Americans' lives were better before. This is something you never hear on mainstream media, let alone when you're at the Globalist Summit in Davos, Switzerland. That's where this interview took place, outside in the snow at the WEF Summit, the World Economic Forum Summit, a gathering of the world's elite where they all get together and decide ways to improve our future, even if their plans we completely disagree with. Well, Jamie Dimon is obviously attending the event. He's one of the most powerful people in America, runs the largest bank in America, and is on speed dial over at the Federal Reserve and at Treasury. They call on this man often. He's always in the room before a major decision is made about monetary policy, that kind of thing. So he's influential, to say the least, very influential at these WEF events. Well, watch him floor the hosts on CNBC. They are literally left speechless. This is too good. Watch this.
How do you see the U.S. economy playing itself out over the next 12 months? This is an election year. We've been talking a lot about what just took place in Iowa and trying to understand how the American public is going to feel about the economy may ultimately dictate how the president is decided.
And I just also want to point out, I wish the Democrats would think a little more carefully when they talk about MAGA, and if you travel this country, and the country's unbelievable. We took our bus trip this year, and Leslie Picker was on Spokane and Boise and Bozeman. People are growing. They're hungry to grow. They're innovating. It's everywhere. It's not just Silicon Valley. So we've got this great hand. But when people say MAGA, they're actually looking at people voting for Trump, and they think they're voting, and they're basically scapegoating them, that you are like him. But I don't think they're voting for Trump because of his family values. Now, if you look, just take a step back, be honest. He was kind of right about NATO, kind of right about immigration. Mm-hmm. He grew the economy quite well.
China virus.
Tax reform worked. Mm-hmm. He was right about some of China. I don't like what he did.
No, I said China virus.
Yeah, I understand. He may have been right. And I don't like how he said things about Mexico. I don't like, but he wasn't wrong about some of these critical issues. And that's why they're voting for him. And I think people should be a little more respectful of our fellow citizens. And when you guys have people up here, you should always ask the why. Not like it's a binary thing. You're supporting Trump, you're not supporting Trump. Why are you supporting Trump?
It's hard to hate 75 million of your fellow Americans. And
I agree.
It's done quite a bit.
And, the Democrats have done a pretty good job with the deplorables, hugging onto their Bibles and their beer and their guns. I mean, really, could we just stop that stuff and actually grow up and treat other people with respect and listen to them a little bit? And I do think the economy will affect, and I think this negative talk about MAGA is going to hurt Biden's election campaign.
Should be a little bit more respectful of Trump supporters, you think? Maybe don't treat Trump supporters like second-class citizens. Maybe don't put them on lists, on extremist lists, for buying a Trump coffee mug or a Bible, like the House Subcommittee on Government Weaponization just said. Maybe don't call them authoritarian like we just saw MSNBC do after Trump's victory in Iowa the other day. Rachel Maddow saying the majority of the Republican Party is authoritarian. Maybe stop doing that kind of thing. In another story, border security is now top of mind in Congress as cities are overrun, brought to their breaking point. A new border security deal is being finalized in the Senate right now. A disastrous deal, by the way. And we know it's a disaster because a draft copy of the bill was just leaked, and it shows complete capitulation by the Republicans in the Senate. Republicans like Lindsey Graham, who is wholeheartedly supporting this new immigration bill. Here's some of the specifics of what the bill would do. It allows up to 5,000 migrants into the country per day and provides them taxpayer-funded lawyers. It would also grant work permits to adult children. Also included in the draft bill is government-supplied housing. This comes as December saw the worst month ever in southern border history, with over 275 asylum seekers crossing the southern border and more who didn't file for asylum. And here's the thing. These migrants are being instructed to file for asylum. It's a loophole. We've never seen asylum numbers like this. Most people used to enter the country and just sneak away, try to avoid border patrol. Now they're going to them, so they're being instructed. Somehow they were educated to do this by these NGOs probably. It's a way to legally enter the country. Skip to the front of the line, but it also means they no longer work under the table. Years ago, legal immigrants would work in the shadows, taking jobs that Americans typically didn't want. You would hear politicians say it all the time, how they're the people in the fields picking our vegetables, our crops, etc. But that's all changed in the last few years. Asylum seekers can work legally. And it's why there are now more foreign-born workers employed in the United States than there are native-born workers. Look closely at when this changed. When did the lines start to diverge? 3 years ago in 2020. In another story, the chairman of the WEF, Klaus Schwab, has a 3-hour off-the-books meeting with the CEO of Pfizer on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum's annual summit yesterday. In the story, released by Barron's, by the way, they also report how the CEO has announced he's going to be betting his entire pension on Pfizer's stock. So what could these two people be meeting about for 3 hours? Klaus Schwab and the CEO of Pfizer. It's a long conversation, a long meeting. Well, the details weren't disclosed, but Barron's reports that the meeting happened as reports begin to circulate that there's this new wave of the coof sweeping across the country, sweeping across the U.S. So is it coincidental? I don't know. You tell me. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.